Welcome back. Let's talk about a few time management terms that you should be familiar with for your exam. So these aren't difficult, just know these, put these in your arsenal for passing the exam. First off, leads and lags. Lead time is accelerated time. Lead time, really, it brings activities closer together, maybe even overlapping. So lead time, activity A and activity B, that you bring those activities together. You might even allow them to overlap. So an example, let's go back to painting those hotel rooms. So we're going to have one person that does the priming. They prime the walls. And it takes that person, let's say it's a big room, it will take them 3 hours to prime all the walls, all of them. Well, the primer only needs 30 minutes to dry or cure before it can be painted on. Rather than waiting for a 3-hour head start against the painter, we could do a lead time, let's say, of 1 hour. So the primer has an activity that's going to last for 3 hours. After it's primed, we have painting. Well, instead, we are going to do a lead time of minus 2 hours because we're only going to allow 1 hour for that prime to cure where the painter can begin their activity. So lead time brings activities closer together, even overlapping. Lag time is just the opposite. It's waiting time, that you add lag time to move activities further apart. So lag time could be, we have poured concrete, it's really humid, it's really hot out, it's taking longer for the concrete to cure, to harden, before we can start building on it. So ordinarily, we would have, as soon as we pour the concrete and it's cured, we can begin framing. That's only 8 hours or overnight. Well, because it's so hot and humid, we're going to say, well, we're going to add 24 hours, a whole day of waiting. So lag time moves activities further apart. Then we have schedule compression. Schedule compression means how can I compress the schedule? How can I make my schedule tighter or get done faster is the goal. Well, crashing means you add more labor, you add more people to the activities, but this drives up cost. Crashing, though, can only be done to activities that are effort-driven. If you have a printing press, we talked about printing, so we have a printing press here, it can do, let's say, 50,000 units per hour. That's how many sheets of paper it can go through this printing press. Adding more people to the activity of printing won't make that piece of equipment work faster. It's a fixed duration activity. It's immune to crashing. But if we have an activity where we have to clean a stadium after a big event, well, if one person does it, it's going to take a long time. But if we can get 50 people to go in and help clean, then it takes less time. So that's crashing. So you can add more people to get done faster. The penalty for crashing, though, is it costs more money because you have to pay for the labor. Crashing could also be you get a faster piece of equipment. So we have that printing press that does 50,000 per hour. What if we bought a printing press that does 100,000 units per hour? So we've crashed it by adding a resource. Typically it's people, though. Fast tracking, very similar to adding lead time. Fast tracking allows usually phases to overlap, but it could be activities. But typically it's phases, that you allow phases to overlap. But it adds risk, because if I'm not done with the first phase yet, and I start the second phase, there could be a problem in the first phase, which now affects the second phase because of the risk. Another little tool you can do here is the Monte Carlo simulation. It's called Monte Carlo because of Monte Carlo and games of chance. Imagine a roulette table with all those different numbers, and you put your chips on the different numbers, and there's that ball that goes in the wheel, spins around. Okay, a roulette table. All the different possibility combinations of where that ball could land and all of where the possibilities of where you put your chips. So that's a Monte Carlo simulation, in that it's looking at all of the possible optimistic, most likely pessimistic, and then what variables you change or tinker with in your schedule to get the best outcome for the entire project. So that's Monte Carlo simulation. And this is a software-driven, there are lots of software-driven approaches for Monte Carlo. So just recognize those for your exam. I would anticipate seeing those on your PMP exam. Great job finishing this section on time management. A lot of information we talked about in this section on time management. So let's do just a quick wrap about some of the key things you need to know from this section in our time management cram. First off, what's in the schedule management plan? Recall the schedule management plan. It's a subsidiary plan. It has the schedule model data, the level of accuracy, how will you measure time, hours, days, weeks. What are your procedure links, your schedule model maintenance, control thresholds for, plus or minus a percentage? What are your rules for performance measurements? Who do you report to? And then what are the process descriptions? We talked about the planning components. Remember the control account plans, like the kitchen, X amount of dollars, X amount of time for these deliverables. And then we talked about planning packages. It's a component of the control account. I know I need cabinets, but I don't know exactly which cabinets we're going to purchase. So it's a decision that needs to be completed, usually a deadline attached to that planning package. We talked about reserve time and Parkinson's law, that work expands to fill the time allotted to it. And so reserve time is a way to combat Parkinson's law, that we work towards ideal time. We talked about float. I know that was your favorite topic in this section. So float, we had free float, where an activity can be delayed without affecting the successor start date. Total float, an activity can be delayed without affecting the entire project completion. And then project float is, you've got this big window to pick up and put down the project at your leisure. I know all of you experience that. But project float is the project can be delayed without passing the deadline, the customer expected completion date. Then we talked about leads and lags. Recall that lead time is accelerated time, could even allow activities to overlap. And then we have lag time. That lag time is waiting time, that we're moving activities further apart. All right, very good. Great job finishing this section on time management. A lot of important stuff in this module. Now, you also want to think about your time management for your exam. So if you get on some tough questions, don't linger. That can rob your time. If you forget to take a break, that's going to rob your brain. So factor in your time on each question, but also factor in your time to get up and take a break and catch your breath and do what you need to do. Okay, great job finishing this section on time management. I'll see you in the next section on cost management.